Every year, Americans spend billions of dollars on kidney supplements, herbal blends in amber bottles, detox teas, cleansing protocols with names borrowed from ancient traditions they have never actually read. And the people buying them are not foolish, they are worried. They have a number on a blood test that has been quietly creeping, or a doctor who said, "Watch your kidneys," and they want to do something about it. Meanwhile, in the Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest medical documents on Earth, written in Egypt around 1550 BCE, healers were already prescribing specific fruits to support the organs they understood as the body's filters. They built entire protocols around food timing, arguing that what you consumed in the evening hours determined whether the body could restore itself while it rested. The Hebrew Scriptures, in Psalms and Proverbs, speak of fruit given in its season as the substance of a long life. They did not have nephrology. They had observation. And tonight, we are going to find out how well those centuries of careful watching line up with what the research now shows. Today we are breaking down 13 fruits, each one chosen for what it can do for your kidneys in that specific overnight window when the filters are trying to rest and recover. Pay close attention when we get to number 1. It is a fruit most people in this country think of as a summer dessert, and almost nobody knows about the thing it does that no other food quite replicates. And at number 7, I am going to stop and tell you a story. It comes from the ancient Near East, and it describes, with remarkable precision, exactly what happens to a body that has been pushed past its limits, and what a single fruit did about it. Number 13. Blueberries. The earliest written accounts of wild berry consumption come not from nutrition science, but from the monks of northern Europe, who documented in monastery records stretching back to the 9th century CE that certain dark berries seemed to help the body pass its waters cleanly during illness. They did not know why. They observed the pattern across generations and wrote it down. What they were observing, without knowing it, was anthocyanin. The same pigment that makes a blueberry, the color it is that deep blue purple, is one of the most potent plant-derived antioxidants ever characterized. And for your kidneys, this matters in a mechanistic way. The primary driver of long-term kidney damage is oxidative stress, a slow accumulation of cellular damage that scars the tiny filtering vessels one by one. Anthocyanins neutralize the reactive oxygen species responsible for that damage. They are, in the most literal sense, the compounds that mop up the rusting. In a 2019 study published in the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry, participants who consumed anthocyanin-rich foods consistently showed measurably lower markers of oxidative stress and inflammation in kidney tissue compared to controls. The effect was not dramatic in any single measurement. It was persistent. That is the kind of protection that matters over a decade. At night, about half a cup fresh or frozen. And frozen is often riper and more pigment-dense. Stirred into a spoonful of plain yogurt if you want something that feels like a meal. Low in potassium, low in sugar, and completely compatible even with kidneys already under strain. The monks did not have clinical trials. They had winter after winter of careful watching. The research is now examining why. Number 12. Cranberries. The Haudenosaunee people of northeastern North America were using cranberries medicinally long before European contact, not for the urinary benefit we now most associate with them, but for wound poultices and as a treatment for what their healers described as painful, difficult urination. By the 1600s, both indigenous and European settlers in New England documented the same observation independently. This tart red berry helped keep the urinary tract from becoming infected. The mechanism, finally identified in modern research, is a specific type of compound called A-type proanthocyanidin. What makes this molecule unusual is structural. Most antioxidants work by neutralizing damaging compounds. A-type proanthocyanidins do something physically different They coat the surface of the urinary tract lining in a way that makes it genuinely difficult for E. coli and related bacteria to adhere. The bacteria cannot grip. They pass through rather than colonizing. This matters for the kidneys specifically because of a phenomenon nephrologists call ascending infection. A urinary tract infection that begins in the bladder and travels upward into the kidneys causes a condition called pyelonephritis, and repeated bouts of this, even mild ones over many years, cause cumulative scarring in kidney tissue. Every infection you prevent in the lower tract is a scar you spare the upper. A 2012 study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that daily consumption of low-calorie cranberry beverage reduced recurrent UTI incidence by roughly 40% in women with a history of frequent infections. The catch is what most cranberry products actually are: sweetened cocktails that are nutritionally closer to soda. What you want is unsweetened dried cranberries, a small handful, or pure unsweetened cranberry juice cut generously with water. The tartness is not a flaw. It is the signal that the active compounds are intact. Ancient bodies noticed this fruit worked. We now know precisely why it does. Number 11. Red grapes. In the vineyards of ancient Greece, the parts of the grape that winemakers discarded the pressed skins, the seeds. The pomace were collected by physicians and used in preparations described by Dioscorides, the 1st century Greek physician, as treatments for inflammation and heated blood. He was not thinking about kidneys. He was thinking about the body's overall inflammatory burden. He was, it turns out, closer than he knew. The skin of a red or purple grape contains resveratrol, one of the most intensively studied plant compounds of the last 3 decades. What resveratrol does in the kidney is particularly relevant at night. It activates a class of proteins called sirtuins, specifically SIRT1, which regulate cellular stress response, and have been shown in multiple animal models to reduce kidney fibrosis, the scarring process that permanently reduces filtering capacity. Human trials are still early, and results are mixed. But the mechanism is compelling enough to have sustained major research programs at institutions, including Harvard. The nighttime application adds another dimension. Red grapes contain a small but measurable amount of melatonin, the same signaling hormone your brain releases to initiate the sleep cycle. It is not pharmacological quantity. This is not a supplement. But a fruit that gently nudges the body toward deeper sleep is also a fruit that helps blood pressure take its natural nighttime dip, and that dip, the 10 to 20% drop in pressure during sleep that nephrologists call nocturnal dipping, is precisely the kidney's recovery window. The two benefits arrive together. 10 to 15 red grapes, eaten whole with skin on, is the right evening quantity. Freeze them. Frozen grapes eat like sorbet and keep the portion honest. Dioscorides threw away the skins. Modern research went back and found the medicine in them. Number 10. Apples. The apple appears in the Torah, in the Talmudic writings, in the Song of Solomon, and in the agricultural records of ancient Persia, where it was cultivated in walled gardens called paradisa, the root word from which we eventually get the English word paradise. It was a prestige fruit, a restoration fruit, and there are reasons its reputation has outlasted almost every other food in Western cultural memory. What an apple does for the kidneys runs through the gut first. The soluble fiber in apple flesh, primarily a compound called pectin, feeds the beneficial bacterial communities of the intestinal microbiome, stimulating them to produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. Butyrate reduces intestinal permeability, what researchers sometimes call leaky gut, and dramatically lowers the amount of inflammatory signaling compounds that escape the gut wall and enter the bloodstream. Kidneys filter everything in that bloodstream. A calm, well-fed gut sends them less work and less damage. This pathway, now called the gut-kidney axis, is one of the most active areas in nephrology research. A 2020 review in Nutrients synthesized evidence from multiple studies showing that microbiome disruption accelerates kidney function decline. while prebiotic fibers like pectin measurably slow it. The skin of the apple carries quercetin, a flavonoid with well-documented anti-inflammatory and vasodilatory properties. Peeling the apple discards most of it. Eat it whole. A slightly tart variety Granny Smith. Brayburn. Pink Lady carries a little less sugar and even more of the protective fiber. Slice it. Dust it with real cinnamon. Eat it an hour before bed. The fiber has time to reach the gut before you lie down. A walled garden fruit. A backdoor to kidney protection that runs through the microbiome. The ancient farmers did not know the pathway. They knew the pattern. Number 9. Tart cherries. Tart cherries appear nowhere in the ancient texts with anything like the prominence of grapes or figs. And that absence is itself interesting, because we now know they are among the most pharmacologically active fruits we have. They were common in cooler northern climates, Persia, the Caucasus region, parts of Central Europe. But the food cultures that left the most detailed written medicinal records centered on the Mediterranean, and tart cherries were not a Mediterranean fruit. Their mechanism for kidney protection is unlike anything else on this list. The primary pathway is uric acid. Uric acid is a breakdown product of compounds called purines found in meat, organ meats, alcohol, and certain legumes, and your kidneys are responsible for filtering it out. When uric acid runs high in the blood, it does compounding damage. It forms the crystals responsible for gout. It nucleates kidney stones. And research published in the Journal of the American Society of Nephrology has now linked chronically elevated uric acid to accelerated kidney function decline independent of gout altogether. High uric acid is, on its own, a kidney toxin. A 2012 clinical trial at Boston University found that tart cherry consumption reduced blood uric acid levels and inflammatory markers associated with gout flares. A 2019 review in Nutrients extended the evidence, finding consistent uric acid lowering effects across multiple studies. The proposed mechanism involves anthocyanins inhibiting the enzyme xanthine oxidase, the same enzyme targeted by allopurinol, the most commonly prescribed gout medication. And then there is the melatonin. Tart cherries are the single richest dietary source of plant melatonin identified in food science research, with concentrations hundreds of times higher than what is found in most other fruits. At bedtime, this creates a convergent benefit: uric acid lowered, sleep depth improved, blood pressure, nocturnal dip supported. Use pure unsweetened tart cherry juice, a 2-ounce splash diluted in water, or a small spoonful of unsweetened dried tart cherries an hour before bed. Anything labeled cherry cocktail or cherry flavored is sugar water. The northern cultures that grew this fruit did not know about xanthine oxidase. They knew that it helped people move more freely in the morning. The research is now explaining precisely why. Number 8. Strawberries. The Iroquois used wild strawberries ceremonially in their strawberry festival, which marked the first fruit of the growing season and was explicitly framed as a gift of restoration, the earth's first medicine after the long cold. Medieval European herbalists classified strawberries as cooling fruits, prescribed for fevers and for what they called heated kidneys. The same classification appears in Ibn Sina's Canon of Medicine, the great 11th century Islamic medical encyclopedia, where strawberry leaf and fruit are described as agents that clarify the urine and ease the work of the renal organs. Ibn Sina did not know about ellagic acid, but ellagic acid is exactly what he was working with. Found in high concentrations in strawberry seeds and flesh. Ellagic acid is a polyphenol with demonstrated anti-inflammatory and antioxidant activity. In laboratory studies, it has been shown to reduce the expression of nuclear factor kappa B, the master inflammatory switch in kidney tubular cells. That is a direct anti-inflammatory effect at the cellular level of the organ we care about. Strawberries are also the richest common dietary source of vitamin C among frequently consumed fruits, providing more per cup than oranges. Vitamin C. independent of its immune associations, is a direct antioxidant in kidney tissue and has been associated in epidemiological studies with lower risk of kidney stone formation. At night, they are almost perfectly engineered for the bedtime window, high water content, low sugar relative to most fruits, low potassium, and a fiber to carbohydrate ratio that produces minimal blood glucose response. Half a cup to 1 cup. Sliced. With plain yogurt and a light shake of cinnamon. Or frozen, the ellagic acid survives freezing intact. Ancient ceremonial wisdom. Medieval medical precision. Modern molecular confirmation. Number 7. Figs. Now I want to stop the list for a moment, because what comes next deserves more than a paragraph. It deserves the full story. Picture the Sinai wilderness approximately 3,000 years ago. A man named Elijah, a prophet, a figure of enormous historical importance in the Hebrew tradition, has been running for his life. He has just confronted 450 prophets of Baal in a public contest on Mount Carmel. He won. And then Queen Jezebel sent a message that she was going to have him killed. And Elijah, this man, who had just called down fire from heaven, this man, who had faced down an entire royal court, ran. He ran a full day into the wilderness. And then he sat down under a tree and asked to die. 1 Kings chapter 19. Verse 4. He himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a broom bush. And he asked that he might die, saying, "It is enough." He was not being dramatic. He was physiologically collapsed. He had not eaten. He had not slept in days. He was experiencing what we would now clinically recognize as a combination of severe dehydration, hypoglycemia, adrenal exhaustion, and acute psychological crisis. His body was in genuine systemic shutdown. What happened next is the part the scholars debate, but the nutritionists find remarkable. Verse 5. And behold, an angel touched him and said, "Arise and eat." And he looked, and behold, there was at his head a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. Twice. The angel came twice. The second time, with a specific reason given, "Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you." The text does not specify a fig cake explicitly at this verse, but throughout the ancient Near East, the standard portable food of that era, the specific thing a desert traveler or soldier carried was the pressed fig cake. It appears elsewhere in 1 and 2 Samuel. It appears in Proverbs. It is documented extensively in archaeological finds from that period. The king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire provisioned his armies with them. The Roman legions carried them on campaign for the same reasons: stable, calorie dense, requiring no preparation, preserved without refrigeration. And here is the part that is not poetry. A fig, a dried fig in particular, contains one of the highest concentrations of soluble fiber of any common fruit. When Elijah's collapsed digestive system received that cake, the soluble fiber slowed the absorption of sugars, preventing the blood glucose crash that would have followed a simpler, refined carbohydrate. Figs are one of the few fruits that contain measurable amounts of all three electrolytes, simultaneously potassium, to restore cellular fluid balance. Calcium in concentrations higher per serving than most people know, and magnesium, which supports blood vessel relaxation and the neurological quieting needed for sleep. Elijah slept. Then he ate again. Then he traveled 40 days on the strength of that provision. The text presents this as a miracle. The physiology explains what the miracle worked through. For the kidneys, specifically figs, contain a compound called phycin, a proteolytic enzyme that supports kidney tubular function. And their prebiotic fiber feeds the gut microbiome in ways that reduce inflammatory load reaching the kidneys overnight. 2 or 3 dried figs an hour before bed provide exactly the kind of slow-release carbohydrate, mineral restoration, and prebiotic benefit that supports the overnight recovery window without overloading the filters. The prophet did not know about potassium or magnesium or phycin. He knew he was given exactly what his destroyed body needed. That is the convergence this whole video is built on. Millennia of careful observation. The research is now catching up. If this kind of ancient knowledge, the kind that turns out to have a molecular mechanism, resonates with you, hit like and subscribe right now, because the next entries go even deeper. Number 6. Pineapple. Pineapple appears in no ancient text from the Old World for a very simple reason. It is a New World fruit. The Tupi-Guarani people of what is now Brazil cultivated and consumed it for centuries before European contact. When Spanish and Portuguese explorers brought it back in the 16th century, it caused a sensation. King Ferdinand of Spain reportedly declared it the finest fruit he had ever tasted. It became the most expensive fruit in Europe. A single pineapple could rent an entire country estate for an evening in 18th century England, because it required greenhouse cultivation. But the indigenous people of its origin, who cultivated it longest, did something that the European aristocracy, displaying it on dinner tables as a status symbol, did not. They used it medicinally, specifically for reducing inflammation, treating digestive disturbance, and aiding recovery from injury. The active compound bromelain was not isolated and identified until 1891, but the Guarani had been working with its effects for generations. Bromelain is a proteolytic enzyme complex, meaning it breaks down proteins in the body. It has been shown to reduce levels of prostaglandins, signaling molecules that drive inflammation, and to modulate immune system activity in ways that reduce chronic, low-grade inflammatory burden for kidneys, which are damaged primarily by chronic inflammation and oxidative stress over time. This matters in a real but indirect way. Reducing the total systemic inflammatory load takes pressure off the filters. Bromelain is also one of the few plant enzymes shown to survive partial digestion and exert systemic effects, not just local digestive ones. A 2016 review in Biomedical Reports documented anti-inflammatory and immunomodulatory effects at therapeutic doses, though the research is still developing. For nighttime use, pineapple is sweeter than most of the fruits on this list. So, portion discipline is important. Half a cup of fresh or frozen chunks, never canned in syrup, an hour before bed. It is lower in potassium than most people assume for a tropical fruit, which puts it on the friendlier side for compromised kidneys. The aristocracy put it on the table to be seen. The people who grew it put it in the body to heal it. Number 5. Pomegranate. Pomegranate is one of the most precisely documented fruits in all of ancient medicine. In the Ebers Papyrus, the same Egyptian medical text that is over 3,000 years old, pomegranate rind is prescribed as a treatment for intestinal parasites. But the fruit itself, the arils, appear in contexts of restoration, renewal, and organ support throughout ancient medical literature. Dioscorides recommended it for the urinary organs specifically. In Ayurvedic medicine, pomegranate dadima appears in the Karaka Samhita as a treatment for inflammatory conditions of the lower organs. The fruit appears on the robes of the high priest in Exodus. It decorates the pillars of Solomon's temple. It sits alongside grain and olive oil as one of the 7 sacred foods of ancient Israel. What pomegranate does for kidneys specifically involves a class of compounds called punicle agens, found almost exclusively in this fruit. Punicle agens are the precursors to urolithins, particularly urolithin A, which has become one of the most discussed longevity compounds in recent research. When gut bacteria convert punicle agens into urolithin A, that compound activates a cellular cleanup process called mitophagy, the selective removal of damaged mitochondria. In kidney cells, this process is understood to be protective against the accumulation of dysfunctional cellular machinery that drives aging and disease. A 2014 study published in Food and Function found that pomegranate juice consumption reduced markers of oxidative stress in kidney transplant recipients. A 2017 study in Journal of Nutritional Science found reduced inflammatory markers in patients with chronic kidney disease who consumed pomegranate extract over 12 weeks The evidence is preliminary but consistent. The practical note pomegranate juice is high in sugar and often processed in ways that reduce punicalagin content. Fresh arils. The seeds themselves are the optimal delivery mechanism. A quarter to a half cup in the evening. If you are using juice, choose cold-pressed, unsweetened, and limit to a few ounces. A fruit sacred across multiple ancient civilizations, documented in their most sophisticated medical texts, is now being studied at the cellular level. The pattern holds. Number 4. Watermelon. Watermelon is not a fruit most people associate with sophistication. It is associated with summer picnics, with casual abundance, with something you eat outdoors and let drip. But Egyptian tomb paintings dating to approximately 1500 BCE show watermelon being placed in burial chambers as food for the afterlife, a significant honor in a culture that chose those provisions carefully. The ancient Egyptians were intentional about this. They were also, as it turns out, onto something specific. Watermelon contains more lycopene per serving than any other commonly consumed fruit or vegetable, including tomatoes. Lycopene is a carotenoid antioxidant, and its specific protective role in kidney tissue has been examined in several animal and in vitro studies showing reduction of cisplatin-induced kidney damage. Cisplatin is a chemotherapy agent used precisely because it is toxic to rapidly dividing cells, and one of its primary side effects is kidney damage. Compounds that can mitigate that specific pathway are considered worth examining for broader kidney protective effects. Watermelon also contains a remarkable amino acid called L-citrulline, found in especially high concentrations in the white rind that most people discard. L-citrulline is converted by the body into L-arginine, which in turn is a precursor to nitric oxide, the primary molecule responsible for blood vessel dilation. Nitric oxide relaxes arterial walls, reduces systemic blood pressure, and is now understood to play a significant role in maintaining the healthy microvasculature of kidney tissue. Blending the rind with the flesh captures this. At night, watermelon's overwhelming water content, over 90%, makes it one of the most hydrating foods you can consume. Gentle hydration in the evening hours supports kidney filtration without demanding the burst of increased filtration that consuming large amounts of liquid can cause. The sweetness is real, so half a cup to 1 cup is the right evening portion. Blend white rind and red flesh together for the full citrulline benefit. The Egyptians honored it. The research is showing why they might have been right. Number 3. Kiwi. Kiwi does not appear in ancient Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, or South Asian texts because it is native to southern China, where it was known as yang tao, the sun peach, and consumed medicinally for centuries before Western botanical explorers encountered it in the 19th century. Traditional Chinese medicine practitioners documented it as a food that supported the Shen organs, a category that in TCM corresponded roughly to what we would call the renal and adrenal systems, and used it specifically for conditions involving what they called hot and obstructed urinary function. Kiwi's kidney-relevant profile is unusually broad. It is one of the richest dietary sources of vitamin C, higher per gram than orange, with a single medium kiwi providing over 70 milligrams, approximately 80% of the recommended daily intake. As we have discussed, vitamin C functions as a direct antioxidant in kidney tissue and has been associated in epidemiological data with lower kidney stone risk. Kiwi is also a significant source of vitamin K, folate, and potassium, and here we reach the same important caveat that applies to citrus. For healthy kidneys, potassium is beneficial. For kidneys already in late-stage failure, it requires management. If you carry a kidney disease diagnosis, discuss potassium-containing foods with your physician before increasing them. The unique addition that kiwi brings is an enzyme called actinidin, a cysteine protease that significantly improves gastric protein digestion. Better protein digestion means less undigested protein reaching the colon, which means less ammonium and uremic solutes produced in the gut that the kidneys must clear overnight. Again, The gut-kidney axis fix the upstream problem, and you reduce downstream burden. 1 or 2 kiwis in the evening, eaten whole, with the small seeds intact. The seeds contain additional fiber and antioxidants. The skin is edible and nutrient-dense, though its texture is an acquired taste. Traditional Chinese medicine observed the renal support without the vocabulary to name the mechanism. The vocabulary arrived 12 centuries later. Number 2. Papaya. The Mayan civilization, which reached its height between approximately 250 and 900 CE, maintained extensive botanical records of medicinal plants. Among them, papaya chich, put in Mayan, was documented as a treatment for what translates roughly as obstructed passage of waters, a description consistent with urinary difficulty or kidney-related edema. The Aztec pharmacopoeia similarly documented papaya leaf and fruit for kidney and urinary function. When Spanish missionaries in the 16th century began compiling indigenous medical knowledge, they found consistent agreement across multiple Mesoamerican traditions that papaya supported what they could only translate as the filtering organs. Papaya contains papain, a proteolytic enzyme structurally similar to bromelain, but with some distinct properties. Papain has been shown to reduce systemic inflammation through inhibition of COX-2 enzymes, the same pathway targeted by ibuprofen and related anti-inflammatory drugs. For kidneys, there is a bitter irony in this comparison. NSAIDs like ibuprofen are among the most common causes of acute kidney injury and chronic kidney damage. A fruit that provides COX-2 modulation without the nephrotoxic side effects is, mechanistically, a meaningful alternative for managing the chronic low-grade inflammation that drives kidney decline. Papaya is also one of the most concentrated dietary sources of beta-carotene and cryptoxanthin carotenoids that convert to vitamin A and have been shown in animal models to support regeneration of kidney tubular cells after inflammatory injury. Here is the preparation detail. Most people miss papaya enzyme activity is significantly higher in unripe papaya than in ripe fruit. In Mesoamerican traditional use, it was the unripe green papaya shredded into salads or prepared in water that was used medicinally. Ripe papaya is still beneficial, but if you can access green papaya available in most Asian and Latin grocery stores, the papain concentration is substantially higher. Half a cup of ripe papaya in the evening golden, sweet, with a squeeze of lime or a small amount of green papaya if you tolerate it. The seeds, often discarded, contain concentrated papain and can be dried, ground, and used as a spice. Multiple civilizations. Same conclusion. The research arrived to find the mechanism already working. Number 1. Tart cherry juice combined with lemon. We return to tart cherries for the top position, but not simply as a repeat of what we discussed at number 9. Because when you combine tart cherry with fresh lemon juice, and this specific combination is almost never discussed, you activate something that neither does alone. We have already established what tart cherries do: lower uric acid through xanthine oxidase inhibition, provide the deepest plant-based melatonin available in any common food, and deliver anthocyanins that directly protect kidney vasculature. Those effects are real and clinically supported. Lemon adds citrate, and the citrate story is extraordinary. Citrate is a natural chelating agent, meaning it binds to minerals in solution and prevents them from crystallizing. In the kidney, citrate specifically binds to calcium in the urine and prevents calcium oxalate crystals from forming. Calcium oxalate stones are the most common form of kidney stone, responsible for approximately 80% of cases. The leading pharmacological treatment for calcium oxalate stone prevention is potassium citrate, a prescription medication. Fresh lemon juice is one of the few dietary sources of citrate concentrated enough to meaningfully affect urinary citrate levels. A 2008 study at the University of California, San Diego, found that lemonade therapy, or fresh lemon juice diluted in water, increased urinary citrate levels and reduced stone formation rate comparably to potassium citrate. Supplementation in patients with low urinary citrate. That is a dietary intervention matching a pharmaceutical outcome in a specific, measurable, clinically relevant parameter, combined with tart cherries' uric acid lowering effect. This pairing addresses the two primary chemical pathways for kidney stone formation, calcium oxalate and uric acid crystals simultaneously. There is no other common bedtime drink that does both. The preparation is precise and matters. 2 ounces of pure unsweetened tart cherry juice, not cocktail. Not flavored. The kind that is almost aggressively tart. Juice of half a fresh lemon, squeezed immediately before use. Because bottled lemon juice loses citrate activity through oxidation and heat processing. Diluted in 8 ounces of water. No sweetener. Consumed 45 minutes to 1 hour before bed. The tartness is sharp. That is what working tastes like. Ancient Near Eastern cultures revered sour fruits for what they called clearing the waters. Chinese medicine used sour flavor as the specific taste category associated with kidney function in their 5-element framework. These were different people, different centuries, different conceptual frameworks. They arrived at the same sensory signal. The research is now explaining precisely what that signal was tracking. Now, the bedtime recipe. Into a blender, a small handful of blueberries. About a quarter cup, 4 or 5 sliced strawberries. A splash, just 2 ounces of pure, unsweetened tart cherry juice. Half a cup of plain unsweetened kefir, which brings probiotics for the gut-kidney axis we discussed with apples and figs. A little water to thin it. Juice of a quarter lemon squeezed in fresh. A small shake of real cinnamon, not cinnamon-flavored sugar. Real Ceylon cinnamon, which has documented blood glucose stabilizing effects that reduce the insulin response overnight. Blend smooth. Drink it an hour before bed, in place of whatever salted or sweetened thing used to end your night. On nights you want it slightly richer. Add 2 or 3 dried figs before blending the prebiotic fiber, and minerals from the fig deepen the overnight restorative profile. On nights your stomach is sensitive. Skip the kefir entirely and use only the fruit and water. The recipe is low in potassium, low in sugar, dense in the exact antioxidants your filtering organs want during their recovery window. Before I close, the one thing I need you to hear clearly: every fruit in this video does real work. The research behind them is real. The ancient traditions that identified them, often millennia before a laboratory existed to confirm what they were observing. We're doing what good medicine has always done, watching carefully and recording what they saw. But there is something that runs through all 13 of them that almost nobody talks about, and it is more important than the list itself. Every compound we discussed tonight, anthocyanins in blueberries, bromelain in pineapple, punicolagens in pomegranate, papain in papaya, the citrulline in watermelon's rind, every one of them exists in the whole, unprocessed fruit, and every one of them is diminished, often dramatically, by the processing that turns whole fruit into juice, juice into concentrate, concentrate into flavor extract. The punicolagens that make pomegranate worth discussing are not in pomegranate-flavored candy. The bromelain in pineapple is not in the syrup of canned pineapple. The ellagic acid in strawberries is not in strawberry jam made at high heat for 30 minutes. The L-citrulline in watermelon rind is not in any product derived from watermelon flesh alone. This is the principle that the supplement industry structurally cannot afford to tell you the whole food is almost always superior to the extracted compound. Because the matrix of cofactors, cofragments, enzymes, and fiber that surround the active compound in the whole food are part of how it works. You cannot isolate the music from the instrument and sell it in a bottle. The ancient physicians who described figs for restoration, cranberries for urinary clarity, pomegranate for the renal organs they were prescribing, whole foods prepared with minimal intervention. They did not isolate resveratrol. They ate the grape skin. They did not extract bromelain. They chewed the pineapple. thousands of years of cumulative observation arrived at the same conclusion that the most sophisticated current nutritional research is now confirming the whole fruit, in its season, prepared simply, consumed with intention. That principle is larger than any single fruit on this list. It is, in fact, the question that every label on every supplement bottle is quietly asking you to stop asking. Think about it. If this conversation has been useful to you, please like this video and subscribe and share it with someone in your life who has been told to watch their kidneys without being told what that actually means in daily practice. Leave a comment and tell me what you would like me to cover next. The list of topics is long. The ancient texts are full of things the modern world has forgotten. Please consult your physician before making significant dietary changes, especially if you have been diagnosed with kidney disease, are on dialysis, or take medications that affect potassium or blood pressure. The information in this video is educational and is not a substitute for individualized medical advice.